All right, so this was a great quote by Lou Holtz, who is probably better known for his position as the head coach for Notre Dame for several years. But he also is a really good motivational speaker, and I've actually heard him speak. So this quote I thought was fitting for this topic. Ability is what you are capable of doing. Motivation determines what you do. Attitude determines how well you do it. And I think that's really fitting for this topic regarding motivational interviewing. So as I said, my name is Lisa Naranjo, and I am a program supervisor here at Tri-City Mental Health in our PEI, which is our Prevention and Early Intervention program. We've been doing a lot of trainings to our community partners well over 10 years. I've been with Tri-City for over 10 years now, and I was hired as a trainer initially and have been doing quite a bit of trainings out in the community. All of our trainings are free to folks who work, live, support, reside, or attend a college institution in Pomona, Laverne, or Claremont. And motivational interviewing we've been doing for several years now. And like I said, in the past when we were able to do it in person, we've offered it as an all-day training. But now due to social restrictions and physical distancing, we have moved it to an online platform. And we all know that Zoom fatigue is real. We've probably all been experiencing it. So trying to have anything longer than an hour can be very challenging. So this is just going to be a very quick overview of MI. The 3 things I hope to get through today is our training goals, which is increased knowledge of motivational interviewing and the principles, identifying stages of change, and learning MI techniques. So again, hopefully you can follow along, and I'm really curious to know if what brought you to this presentation today. It was just an interesting topic. You thought it'd be fun to learn. Maybe you've heard of it before or just want to get a refresher on it. But also just be mindful that motivation interviewing is not just a skill for you to learn to apply and support others. It could really be used as a skill for you to take care of yourself and walk you through some difficult challenges or changes that you may be needing to do in your personal life. This is just a brief definition, not even definition, a quote about motivational interviewing. It says, motivation can be defined as the probability that a person will enter into, continue, and adhere to a specific change strategy. Every strategy will look differently for everyone. How you go through this process of change and works for you may look completely different for someone else who's trying to incorporate the same changes that you are. There is no right or wrong. The goal is, as long as you stick to a process that works for you, where you see results, where you see the benefit, and have a long-term goal in mind. So some concepts of motivation, and if I'm going too fast or if you have questions, please, use the chat box. Sylvia will chime in and let me know. The concept of motivation. There's a lot of concepts and a lot of different perspectives that people have about motivation as far as what does it even mean to be motivated, what gets people motivated, and how do people stay motivated. All those factors look differently for everyone, but there are some key concepts that we should keep in mind that first and foremost, for any change to happen in our lives, professionally, personally, community-wide, there has to be some motivation. What's the driving force? What's getting you up every day, working towards this goal that you set up for yourself? You have to be motivated. It's multidimensional. There's different layers of motivation. It's not a linear process. It looks different, and there's different categories you have to take in consideration. There's different dimensions that you probably should keep in mind. How does this one area in my life that I'm trying to change, what's the ripple effect? Where else may it make an impact, positive or negative? Lastly, it's dynamic and fluctuating. It's constantly changing. What motivates you this month may not motivate you next month. Your goals in the future may not look the same is what started you through this path or through this journey. So there are some general motivational strategies, and again, this is depending on what you're trying to take away from this presentation. I hope it's first person focused, me. I know that sounds selfish. Taking care of yourself is not selfish. Wanting to grow and challenge yourself to be better is not selfish. That's you taking care of you. And I think we tend to neglect ourselves and put ourselves off and want to help other people and lose sight of ourselves in the process. So it could be you. What are you looking to do for yourself? Or it could be your role as a family member, as a partner, as a colleague, really trying to help someone. Or if you're going into the field of MI, professional career path, that MI might be a strategy you would use. And just before I even, go into the strategies, just want to give some context that motivational interviewing, when it was first developed and first brought to the platform of a professional skill, was with individuals who were working with clients who are trying to get their life back from substance abuse, use, that had long-term impacts not only on their physical health, but their mental health and personal relationships. So this started as a tool for substance users. Since then, it has evolved to be a skill in mental health for folks who are trying to recover from mental health challenges that they've experienced or diagnosed with that maybe had setbacks. And what we also know is that for some clients, they are dual diagnosed, meaning that they suffer from a mental health illness and a substance use disorder. So MI is used hand in hand to help them regain back their life. And the beauty of MI, it's person focused. And we'll talk more about how do we support someone through change? What is our role? What are some realistic expectations we should have? And how do we guide them through this process? So the first way we can guide them is looking at these strategies. Not only how do we give advice, how do we take advice? Are we open to hearing other people's thoughts and ideas? How well do we give advice? You might think, we're really good at giving advice, but are we giving advice that's appropriate or accurate to the person who is seeking support? What are the barriers that you or someone you're supporting has, and how do we get rid of them? And the barriers can be actual physical barriers. Maybe it's their living situation, their job, maybe it's a physical, tangible place, but it could be other barriers, relationships. It could be themselves and their mental health challenges. The barrier is that they talk themselves out of trying to make some progress and progression in their life. Do they have choices? What choices do you have? What options are you giving or you have available to yourself? Again, decreasing desirability. What is the negative desire that you're seeking that's hindering your growth or your challenges that you've been experiencing? Empathy. We'll talk about empathy. Do you practice empathy? Do you have empathy? Some folks think they have really good empathy skills, and for some folks, they're not quite sure. Providing feedback. Is the feedback constructive? Is the feedback helpful? Is the feedback guiding them for growth, or is it criticizing and blaming? Finally, we have goals. Whether you are helping yourself or helping someone else, are there clear goals outlined? Are we all on the same page? Do we know what we're working towards? Is the goal very clear? Does everyone have a shared understanding of what the goals are? And finally, active helping. A lot of times we find ourselves in situations where we say, Yeah, I'll be there for you. Yeah, just give me a call. I'll help you when you need any help. And when the time comes, you're absent. You're unavailable. You don't respond. So are you actively helping the individual that you're saying you'll show up and be there for? Okay. So approach, motivation for change can be fostered by an accepting, empowering, and safe environment. Accepting the change, acknowledging that this has to happen because your life may depend on it, your health may depend on it, your job, your career, your education, empowering yourself to believe that you can go through this process, that getting through to the other side will have huge rewards for you, empowering you to believe in the process and the possibilities that you set forth. And I think last, the safe atmosphere is, do you have a comfortable, safe space that you feel you can really let your guard down and be vulnerable to this process of change? Because going through this process, a lot of folks will be opening themselves to feel and experience things that can be very challenging and very difficult. And is there a safe space for them to do that? Ambivalence. I'm sure we all have experienced some form of ambivalence in our life, whether it's recently or currently, and probably will have more bouts of ambivalence in the future. And that's just really feeling two ways about something. When you have those moments where you're at a crossroads and you're just not sure which way to go, or that phase, I'm just sitting on the fence, I don't know what side to land on. That is a major challenge for a lot of folks going through changes in their lives, is that sense of uncertainty. What side do I go on? There's pros and cons to both. Which way do I go? And all challenges contains an element of ambivalence. So be prepared for that. Resolving ambivalence in the direction of change is a key element of MI. It's very normal. In fact, for those of us who are gone through change, may have been like, yeah, I was all over the place. I went back and forth. Do I go here or do I not go there? And, to put it in a lot of context, it could be for like, do I take this job or not? Yeah, it plays great, but the commute is so far. Yeah, the job has opportunity for growth, but I don't know if this is really the field I want to go into. So we always have ambivalence, career-wise, colleges, do I go to this school that's closer to home, closer to family, or do I go and take a risk and go cross country and go to a college or university on the East Coast? So we always have that sense of not sure which direction we should go in. We want to change and then we don't want to change, everyone, new year, new lifestyle. They want to change their hair, their weight, to get healthier. But what does that mean? What do I have to sacrifice? Is the sacrifice worth the reward? So working with imbalance is working with the heart of the problem. And for some people, the heart of the problem is the hardest part, is trying to figure out what really is their desire for change. So I ask everyone who's with us right now to maybe use a chat box and just ask, what is the challenge? Everything that we've talked about up to this point regarding change, ambivalence, desire to change, ability to change, resources to change. What are the challenges that maybe you have focused on or had in your life, or that you're currently helping someone else go through? What are some key challenges when we talk about change?
So far, nothing in the chat.
Okay. Well, if someone does want to include something in the chat to discuss, what are some challenges? I'm going to address some of the challenges, and then you can chime in if you agree or disagree, or maybe that triggered a thought you had about a challenge. Okay, I'm going to switch over to the next slide. So this video I found, and I really enjoy playing it because this could be a challenge, and it's just a quick, like 2-3 minute video, and we're gonna talk about it for a second after. So that's a really funny video, and we can probably all relate, depending on who you are. You could have had both roles, where you are the individual who has the nail in your head, and everyone can see what the problem is except for you. And when they try to point it out, you get defensive or upset or discouraged, that you feel they're not listening to you. And if they just listen to you, then they would understand what the problem is. And I'm sure a lot of us have been in this situation where we see the nail and we're trying to convey, like, this is the problem. You know, you're saying you're upset about this, this, and this, but it's right here. And yet they don't want to listen to you. So that is a challenge. The challenge is how do you address or discuss sensitive topics to individuals when there are challenges in their life that clearly need to be addressed. And, you know, also too, we'll talk about in a moment, but, you know, is the challenge that you're witnessing, is that a challenge for you? And maybe it's not a challenge for the individual. And then it becomes back to, well, whose problem is it? And how does it impact you or your relationship with this individual? Take a moment to think about the last time you had to make a change in your life, or maybe you're currently going through some changes in your life. And think about how that's made it, how that has impacted you with your daily activities, relationships, decisions that you've made. So just think about, you know, challenges or changes that you have, and what does that process look like for you? And was it easy? Was it difficult? Was it a process that you went through without a problem, or was it, you know, hiccups along the way? So just think about that, and if you want to add that to the chat, I'd appreciate it. And I'm going to jump on to the next slide. So we're going to start getting into some specific details of MI, and the very first thing we have to think about is where are you, if this is your change, or where is the person at who you're trying to support in this process of change? Are you at a point of acceptance and trying to move on? Are you in denial? Are you just having thoughts but really are not motivated to do anything about it? We're going to be talking about stages of change, and how each stage is different, and the pros and cons for both. But if you're someone who's trying to support an individual, you really have to figure out where they're at, not where you want them to be, not where you think they should be, but really where they're at, because it's really going to help that process as a supportive figure hopefully go a little bit more smoothly. So helping people change involves increasing their awareness of their need to change and helping them start moving through the stages of change. Recognizing the need to change and understanding how to make it doesn't happen all at once. So there's kind of like, there's the thought of the change, and then there's the action of change. And sometimes they don't fire all together. You may have the desire to change, but not the ability to do it. Or there's nothing really holding me back. I could change. I'm just not motivated. I'm mentally tapped out and really don't have the energy to put into it. So when we look at levels of change talk and the stages of change, just be mindful that there are different stages and people start in different places, but really just trying to identify where they're at. So we have the desire, and I'll break these down further on the next slide. We have ability, reasons, the need, a commitment, activation, and taking steps. So on the very bottom, you'll see there's a pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, and action. We talked about ambivalence. And, someone can start off in contemplation and then go back to pre-contemplation. We may have someone who's really well prepared and really thought this thoroughly. And then now that they have to take some action steps, they want to stay here for a while because this is where they're comfortable and they're not ready to be uncomfortable. You can have a conversation and be on the same page about where they're at, and then 2 weeks later, it can change all over again. And if this resonates with you, if you can relate to this, because your personal experiences, again, please use the chat box. I don't know, Sylvia, if people are writing in, but please share any thoughts or comments that you have with stages of change or supporting change.
Yeah, Lisa, we actually had the chat function was not working, so that's where they haven't been able to provide. So I just allowed them the ability to unmute so they can provide.
Okay. So yeah, unmute. I think they have a Q&A box.
Yes, they're using the Q&A.
Okay. Yeah, so I apologize. If you don't have the chat feature or you can't use it, there should be a Q&A box there to use. Or you can just unmute yourself and say, excuse me, I have a quick comment or thought about that. And that's fine too. Okay, so this is just breaking down. So when we talk about desire, these are the questions that you may want to take into consideration. Ask yourself or ask the person that you're supporting, how badly do you want this? Like, how committed are you? How would you like for things to be different? What are you looking to achieve? What do you wish for? What do you enjoy about this? So these are just questions about trying to guess where they're at. And when we talk about ability, you really want to also think about resources. Not only are they able to, but do they have access to resources? What do you think you might be able to change? How do you think, how would you do that if you wanted to? What ability skills do you have that would make this possible? Have you managed this before? Especially if it's something they never accomplished before or had to work on. What are the reasons? Are these valid reasons or superficial? Are there reasons for themselves? Or are there reasons because other people told them they've had to? Because when you're told to do something, your motivation changes very drastically, as opposed to, these are my reasons for why I want to do that. What concerns do you have about your reasons? What concerns does your spouse, partner, family, friend, colleague have? What would make it worth your while? Then the need. What needs to happen? How is it important to you? How urgent is this? What do you think has to change? Followed by commitment. How are you going to do it? What will it look like? How do you know when you achieved it? Activation. How are you going to do this? So it's a process, and each one looks differently for everyone. The reasons, how they respond to these questions may sound different. And when we talk about these stages, they may go back. Like, I really thought I was ready to make some changes, but after thinking about it, I don't even know if I have the money to do it. I'm gonna have to go back and think about my ability to do it. Like this might be a huge financial burden if I decide to go to school on the East Coast. Will I be able to come home for the holidays? Will I be able to see travel if I take this job? So again, the influx of reasons, desires, and action will always come up. So first thing is motivational interviewing principles. These are the principles. These are kind of like the objectives to MI and why folks may start to go down this road and process. And then we're going to go into actually techniques to do it. And again, I apologize if this is very quick, thorough review of it. I'm just trying to be mindful of time. We're halfway through the webinar and definitely want to give you a chance to ask questions if you have any questions before we end. So the 4 basic principles of MI is expressing empathy, developing discrepancy, roll with resistance, and support self-efficacy. So these are the principles behind MI. And the first one I think is key, and it was mentioned earlier in the presentation, this whole concept of empathy. For some of us, being empathetic can come very naturally and very easily, and don't have a problem going to a space or a place that we open up and allow ourselves to be equally vulnerable as the person we're supporting. And for other folks, it can be very challenging. It can be very difficult. Maybe you just can't relate, you can't understand, or you can't take yourself to a space or place to fully understand the challenges this individual is going through. It's the most critical principle. It creates an environment conducive to change, instills a sense of safety, being understood, accepted, and readiness. So we talked about creating a safe space and environment to feel I can put my guard down, I can break down this wall that I built up and really express my concerns and what's really challenging me. It builds trust and rapport and can really allow a space for really difficult issues to be shared and encouraging you to take what they have to say seriously, even if it's something that you maybe don't quite understand, but acknowledging it as it's a real experience for them. Lastly, it sets the tone within which the entire communication occurs. Without it, other concepts may sound like mechanical techniques. So it's just like the human approach to it, a natural flow of information, sharing experiences, and what does that mean to both of you. So we talk about discrepancy, the state of our quality of being in a disagreement, or displaying an unexpected or unacceptable difference. So discrepancy is, I may not agree, I may not understand. How do we resolve that? Help them become more aware of the discrepancy between their unhealthy behaviors, choices, and the more deeply involved held values and goals. So again, if someone's trying to give up smoking, so what questions you could ask could be like, why do you enjoy smoking? What does it do for you? Why have you been doing this for 4 years? Why now do you want to change this behavior? What values do you hold that impact your inability to stop smoking? Helping them recognize and articulate negative consequences for their unhealthy behaviors or choices. Kind of like doing the pros and cons. Well, you want to smoke, yet you have asthma. How is that working with your health? That's a long-term effect? And then explore their life goals. Like, what do you really want to achieve? And if you continue to smoke, how is that going to impact? If you have goals in your professional life and personal life, yet you don't want to give up smoking, how might that be a barrier? How might that be some conflict? So you're really gonna have to be like the devil's advocate, like, okay, so you're smoking, but you want to do this. How is that going to work? How does that look? And that also probably plays into where they're at in the stages of change. Any questions so far before I move on, or comments?
Not so far, but we were able to, everyone's able to access the chat now.
Okay. Role with resistance. The act or power of resisting, opposing, or withstanding. So this is kind of like go with the flow. If you're, instead of trying to fight the current, say when you go to the beach, instead of fighting it, just let it go to the side, don't try to go against it, go along it, alongside it. This is kind of like what role and resistance is. In general, it's unhelpful to argue with a person. If you're in a relationship where you are constantly combative, defensive, argumentative, you're not going to get very far. In fact, they may not want to confide in you this change that they're trying to make in their life. When you're so confrontational, folks get defensive and shut out anything that you're trying to say, even if it is helpful. It can be counterproductive when you're not able to roll with resistance. So think about that and also too, at some point you may have to realize that although you really want to help this person change, you just might not be the right person to guide and support them through this change. Maybe your role in this process isn't supportive, encouraging, but just more of a check in, or I'll meet you on the other side when you're ready or when you're done, especially if it's a very close personal relationship that you have a lot invested in. Ambivalence about change is usually interpreted as resistance. So when they go back and forth, I want to do this, I don't want to do this, someone might take it as, oh, they just don't want to change, they're resistant, they don't want to make it work. No, they're just not quite sure where they should land. Finally, the support self-efficacy, capacity for producing a desired result or effect. So again, the opposite of role and resistance is being optimistic, believing that they can accomplish the goals, the tasks, the challenges that they've outlined to make this change happen. You have a good can-do, do-good mentality, and it's really helpful when someone is going through some major challenges in their life to have someone be optimistic and think of the positive things as opposed to all the negative things that could potentially happen.
Lisa, we have someone just made a question. Being that I'm not very affectionate or empathetic, are there any tips on how to work towards being more empathetic?
Thank you for that question. Yeah, I definitely would say that, some folks just are not very warm and fuzzy and emotional. And empathetic doesn't mean you have to be warm and fuzzy. You really have to just allow yourself to acknowledge and accept that their space they're in is real. And maybe you can't relate to that situation, but identify a similar situation that you've been through and how difficult it was. So an example may be, let's say the person wanted to give up smoking. I've never smoked. I hate smokers. I don't like smokers. And I have a really tough issue with people who smoke. So you might feel like, I can't be really supportive because I'm not very a fan of people who smoke. However, maybe there's something you had to give up similar. Maybe for dietary reasons, you can no longer eat red meat, just as an example. Or you develop an allergy to peanuts, just example. And the fact that you had to really retrain and reteach yourself to go through and eliminate something that you really enjoyed, you really liked, and it was a challenge for you to give up. So Where the empathy is I may not know what it's like to give up smoking because I don't smoke, but I knew what it was like when I had to give up peanuts and or a peanut allergy. So that's where the empathy comes in, is you're connecting to a similar experience where you can relate and sit with like, yeah, it was very tough. It was emotionally, it was draining. It was a process. It didn't happen overnight. It took time. It took me, going to the doctor 2 times with allergic reactions before I really realized how serious this was. That's where empathy comes in. And I hope that kind of answers the question, but thank you for your question. So empathy is more about you connecting with something that you've experienced similar, if you're not able to connect with their experience. Moving on to our techniques. These are the micro skills of motivational interviewing. So these are some things that you will start using on yourself or someone that you're supporting. It's also known as the ORs, are skills that can be used by you to help move someone through the process of change. So we have open-ended questions, affirmation, reflective listening, and summarizing. And again, this is a lot of information, and I'm just giving you the highlights. And I highly encourage you to do some more research. There's a lot of great institutes. UCLA trained us on how to provide MI, so I know they do a lot of great research on MI. There's probably a lot of great videos and TED Talks on MI if you want to follow up on, or you can reach out to us and be more than happy to set up a training that does more in-depth information. So the O in ORS is open-ended question. And when you really want to help someone change, you want to create a space where you ask questions that gives them a space to respond and a safe space to respond without being fear of judgment. So it solicits information in a neutral way. It gives them the freedom to disclose how much information they feel comfortable sharing. So it helps them elaborate own views of the problem as opposed to what you want to hear or what they think you might want to hear. And this is really great when you have open-ended questions, because it not only does it avoid prejudgments that you may have about the person or the situation, but it allows you to hear really what the problem is. And it may be something that you hadn't thought of or that you didn't know was a challenge. You may find out something about this individual that you've known for years and had no idea that this was a struggle for them. It keeps the communication moving, and it keeps them doing all the talking. When you are doing MI, you're 90% listening and asking questions that allows them to elaborate even more on what they've already disclosed. Affirmation, it focuses on the achievement of the individuals. So through this process of change, you don't want to wait until they reach the end of the finish line to give them some positive feedback. You want to be encouraging, championing them, celebrating them every step of the way of the progress they've been making. I always think of marathons, right? A 26-mile marathon, people who run for 26 miles, who kudos to them, because I can't even run a half a block, let alone 26 miles. But you notice along the way, there are people who are cheering them on. You got this, keep it up. Fellow runners are cheering on other runners, like, we're almost there, we got this, we hang in there. You have people who are giving them water, giving them protein bars, giving them wet towels to stay cool down their body. So that's when I think of affirmation, is throughout that whole process, no one's just waiting at the finish line. There are people along the way, and that's what affirmation does. Supports their persistence, encourage them to continue to do what they're doing. You're checking in throughout the way. If it's working, keep it going. If it's not, hold on, let's think about this so you can make sure you finish the process. You might be saying things like, I really appreciate that you told me today. I'm really glad that we checked in. I'm so glad that you're keeping up with with your commitment to make this change in your life. I know it's hard. I can only imagine how difficult it is. So really just giving those little nuggets of affirmation can go a long way. Like I said, a lot of what you're going to be doing is just listening to the individual, to what they are saying, what they're struggling with. So listen to what they're saying and what it means to them. Create an environment of empathy, or at least be non-judgmental. And also just be mindful that even though you don't say it, our body language says a lot. So just because you're sitting there doesn't mean that person's picking up on cues that your body's saying. If you roll your eyes, you're not making eye contact, you're looking away, you're crossing your arms, you get up and walk away while they're middle of a conversation. If your body and your actions are saying, I don't care, I'm not listening to you, I don't want to hear it, they will probably shut down and not want to disclose much more with you. And also just know that you don't always have to agree with it, but just, respect their space and what they're sharing with you. There are 4 different types of reflective listening, and I think this is something really good for you to keep in mind, especially if there's like a lot being discussed. And this is more on could be good on the therapeutic side, but even as a person who's just being a good friend, a good neighbor, a good partner, at some point you want to pause and say, hold on, I just want to make sure I'm following you. Like this is what I've heard. Are we on the right page? Am I understanding what you said? The response could be like, yes, exactly what you just said. That's what I meant. Oh, that's what you heard? No, I didn't mean that. I really meant this. Well, now that I hear you tell me, it makes me think about something else I might have missed. So whichever type of reflective listening, which is repeating, rephrasing, paraphrasing, or reflective feeling, you're just doing as a check-in to make sure we're on the same page. And I think reflective feeling can also be something that is seen as nonverbal. They're talking to you, but they're angry, or they're sad, or they're very shallow in their tone of voice. You can bring this up and say, wow, you seem really upset about this. Do you want to take a moment to gather your thoughts? Do we want to maybe go outside and get some fresh air? You seem really sad. Here's some tissue. Can you please tell me why you're so emotional about this? So really reflect, because you're just being really in tune, not just to what they're saying, but how they're feeling. And a lot of times our body responds to emotions in ways that we never anticipated. And they might say, like, I don't even know why I'm so emotional. I didn't think it would bother me as much as it has been bothering me. And just notice that and sit with them with that and talk about that. And then last thing, summarize. It's just a way to make sure you guys are, again, on the same page. If it's been a while since you've had a conversation with them, you can even start with the summary. Well, I know the last time when we met up and we were talking about this, I recall that you said this, and this, and you felt this, and this, and you weren't sure about this. Is that still true, or has things changed? And then I said, oh, no, we're still there. Nothing's changed. Or, oh, wow, so much has changed. Let me catch you up to what's going on. So summarize, you can start the next conversation with a summary, or you can end the conversation like, well, I'm really glad that you shared this with me. I'm really looking forward to your next phase of this process. And let me know what I can do. So summary is a really great tool to do that. And how do you know when this is being effective? It's through change talk. When you start to hear yourself or the person trying to make change in their life, do they have a desire to change, to keep on changing, to keep on going through the process, through this road, this journey that they put out? Do they still have the ability to change? Do they strengthen that ability to change? Barriers that were there are no longer there. The reasons to change have grown. Instead of doing it for my friend, I'm doing it for me. Instead of doing it for my mom, I'm doing it for me. I'm doing it for me and for my kids. The reasons have evolved. The need to change and the commitment. So when you start hearing all these great positive things that they really are looking forward to, that might not have been there in the beginning of the conversation, are starting to show up and be present, that's something where it's really starting to be effective. It might take a while before you hear change talk, or it might happen fairly soon. You might hear change talk really strong in the beginning, and then it kind of plateaus and drops off, and you're like, yeah, we lost them. We're not quite on the same page anymore. So some questions to ask yourself when in conversation with someone. You know, what am I doing? What's my role? How am I making an impact? How is this impacting me? Where are we going, and who's deciding? Who's making the decisions? If I'm making all the decisions and it's not my problem, I need to take a step back, because this is not my issue. This is their issue. What am I saying and to what end? How involved am I? Am I overly involved? Am I too involved? Especially if you feel like, why do I feel like I'm doing all the work and they're just sitting there going along for the ride? This is not me. And if that's the case, you really need to shift gears and change your role. Because if you're working harder than the person who's trying to change, it's not going to be successful. And the last one, are you dancing or you're wrestling? Is it very confrontational? Is it always turns into a heated argument? Or does it go really well? Do you guys have good conversations? You make really good progress, and you leave the conversation feeling good and productive, as opposed to drained and tired and exhausted and fatigued. That's where we are, and we're coming up. We have a few minutes left, and I just want to open up to anyone who has further questions about this webinar. Again, I know there's a lot to unpack in a short amount of time, but I just wanted to give you an overview of what MI is, how it's used, and the skills and techniques that we incorporate when doing the skill set. My last slide is, again, we do monthly webinars. We encourage you to come back and see us again for different topics. If you are interested in having an MI presentation for your staff, your students, your community that you serve, because you really think this would be great and we can do a more in-depth, thorough presentation, please contact us at cmht@tricitymhs.org, or you can give us a call directly and connect to us, or you can definitely visit our website. So with that being said, does anyone have, I'm going to stop, share real quick. Any questions or comments, Sylvia?
So far, none. I think
Okay.
we could wait a little bit, give some time.
Again, thank you for everyone who was able to sit in and join us. I know it's been a long day. It's Wednesday already, and our afternoons get kind of busy. So thank you for joining. I'll stay on for another minute or two, and not, then we'll sign off. Okay. Well, if you don't have any comments or questions, then you're more than welcome to exit and leave the presentation. I'm going to stay on for another minute before I sign off.